the blue skies go. Poison is the wind that blows from the north and south and east. Whoa, mercy, mercy me. All things ain't what they used to be. No, no. Oil wasted on the oceans and upon our seas. Fish full of mercury.
I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you tuned into our program today in this final hour of today's program. And in this hour, which I've been looking to for quite some time, Michael Meltzner was hired by Thurgood Marshall to be on staff at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Years later, he would represent the GOAT, Muhammad Ali. Later still, he became one of the leading forces behind abolishing America's death penalty. What a life, what a legacy. I can promise you that you will not be disappointed in this hour now that Michael Meltzner joins us on Tavis Smiley. Michael Meltzner, how are you today, sir?
I'm fine, and it's a great pleasure to talk with you, Tavis.
It's a great honor to have you on. I mean that sincerely. Thank you for the opportunity. Glad we've got an hour. I cannot do justice to your august body of work and witness over all these many years. I'm going to do my best to give the audience a better sense of who Michael Meltzner is and what he has done for the benefit of all of us who call ourselves Americans. I will get to your book, I promise, later in this hour. Mr. Meltzner has a book out. It's called Mosaic, Who Paid for the Bullet. We'll get to that later in this hour. But I'd be remiss to not spend a good part of our time in this dialogue talking about his amazing an empowering career. And I want to just walk through certain parts and facets of it, if I can. Let me start where I started a moment ago when I mentioned that you were hired by a guy named Thurgood Marshall to be on staff at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. Just take some time and tell me about those days.
Well, there's just a certain amount of luck in the world, and I've had more than my share. And it just was an accident of history that I got my first job with Thurgood Marshall. As few people still around will remember, in 1960-61, the president sent the reserves to Berlin to stand up against the Russian threats about the city. And one of the lawyers at LDF, and there were only 6 of them then, was sent, Norman Amaker, later a professor in Chicago and a colleague of mine, but he was sent to Berlin for a year. And so I heard through the grapevine, in a way, that Marshall was looking for somebody. So I applied for the job, and one of my professors recommended me. And so I landed at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement, and it changed my life. And one of the interesting things about that was, I went to the Yale Law School, and I'd say 90% of my colleagues went to work for big white shoe law firms. And these guys were paid a handsome amount of money, but they, for 3 or 4 years, did nothing but scut work, reading depositions and being the third person at a table. And within a month, I was writing Supreme Court briefs.
What? I'm curious as to why you wanted that particular gig. To your point, you'd gone to Yale, and your classmates were taking these big, nice paying law firm jobs.
Well,
why'd you want to do this?
Well, I mean, I grew up in New York, in the neighborhood there where it didn't matter what, at least to me and my family, what color or ethnicity you were. My parents were very liberal. This is just what I wanted to do. Not because actually, to tell you the truth, I didn't disdain what these other folks were doing. I just wouldn't be very good at it. And I knew that right away. I just wouldn't be very good at it. So let me tell you a bit about, just for your audience might like to know something about Marshall the person.
Sure, I'm about to ask you that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, what was an amazing thing about Thurgood Marshall was, I mean, I think he lived the most dangerous legal life in American history, but he had an enormous sense of humor, and he loved telling stories. And one of the really fascinating things is when he was supervising you or telling you something, he didn't say, well, maybe you should write this brief a different way or that or this. He would tell a story, and the story might be about something totally different, but there was a message in it, and you got the message.
It kind of
very quickly.
That kind of reminds me of a man named Jesus, that first century Palestinian Jew, because that's exactly what Jesus did. For those of us who are believers and readers of the good book, you know that oftentimes in the New Testament, when they would put upon Jesus and ask him questions, in many respects just messing with him, tempting him, testing him, he would respond in what we call parables, these sort of didactic narratives. And rather than just answer your question, which he could have done, he'd tell you a parable. And when he got done telling that parable, you would understand exactly what the answer to the question was. And so hence Thurgood Marshall's way of telling a story from which you could glean what he was trying to get across to you. I love the phrase that Michael Melchner just used, that Thurgood Marshall lived the most dangerous legal life. The most dangerous legal life. I think I know what he means by that, but I'm going to give him a chance to unpack that when we come forward. You're listening to Michael Melchner on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac, perfected like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop. Haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Deal it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bussin', truckin'. Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range. On a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SCHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Hello?
Man, where are you? I thought you were coming.
I can't. I'm in bed with the flu.
The flu? Whoa. Grandma's about to crowd surf. Man, I'll call you back.
Don't get stuck at home with the flu. A flu shot is safe, effective, and you can get it at the same time as your COVID-19 vaccine. A flu shot is the best way to prevent the flu and its potentially serious complications. Don't get flu FOMO. Learn more at getmyflushot.org.
Brought to you by the AMA, CDC, and the Ad Council.
Anyone can choose to make a difference. You can help people succeed, rebuild after disasters, protect the environment, or feed the hungry. Not only will you make a difference for others, but for yourself. You can earn money for college, learn career skills, and make friendships that last a lifetime. Make a difference. Choose your future. Choose AmeriCorps.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Michael Meltzer has a new book out. It's called Mosaic, Who Paid for the Bullet. I want to get to that. I'm going to have a whole hour with him. We'll get to that later in this hour, but you can't have the kind of career that he's had, working with Thurgood Marshall and Muhammad Ali and working to abolish the death penalty and not spend a good amount of time unpacking that part of his career. So let me continue with our Thurgood Marshall dialogue, Mr. Meltzner. You used this line moments ago, that Thurgood Marshall, to your mind, lived the most dangerous legal life. Take some time. Unpack that for me.
Well, long before he became a judge and a justice, he traveled the South, Jim Crow South, at a time where he was a marked man. Lots of white Americans probably never heard of him, but he was known throughout the South as the NAACP lawyer, and there were many times where he was told, you better get out of town or else. And he was threatened consistently. And, he took that in, and he became a kind of unsentimental person. I want to say something about that, if I may.
Sure.
He was a firm and vigorous supporter of the Bill of Rights and the rights of defendants in criminal cases. But he was not sentimental about people who broke the law. And I once asked him, our law, and this has changed, but at the time, our law did not permit people to appeal sentences in the federal courts. So I said to him, what's wrong with appealing a sentence? You're going to appeal a conviction. The sentence is often more important. And he looked at me and said, I'm all for that as long as I can raise the sentence as well as lower it. And he said it with a twinkle in his eye. And he almost always, regardless of the message, he always conveyed something very human.
Yeah.
And so I loved your connection to Jesus.
Yeah.
Because they both worked in this subtle, indirect, but extremely effective way.
Yeah. Tell me, I want to get personal now if I can. Tell me what some of your takeaways are from having the experience as a young man, basically fresh out of Yale, to work with Thurgood Marshall. Just tell me what it was like for you, what some of your takeaways were all these years later from having worked with him in that moment at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund.
Well, it was just a privilege and a great lesson. But, he became a judge a number of months after he hired me. And I worked with a boss named Jack Greenberg for many years. And he was Thurgood's selection. And you get a sense of the wisdom of this man, and that he appointed as his successor a white Jewish lawyer. And there was a little, not so much criticism, but skepticism about that. But Greenberg was really the real deal, too. And the measure of a boss for me is whether the boss cares a bit about the development of the staff he's working with. And Greenberg was excellent at that, and many of the lawyers I worked with became judges, law professors, and government officials. Yeah. And it was because of the extremely good training and support that we all got at the Legal Defense Fund.
When you look back on your days there, again, you were just a young man then, when you look back on those days at the NAACP LDF, with regard to cases in particular, are there one or two things that you worked on that all these years later still stand out for you?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to go on for a while, so you interrupt me when you want.
Go for it.
I was given a capital case to argue in the Supreme Court of the United States when I was 26 years old.
Wow.
And I may have been the youngest lawyer ever to do that. because I wasn't even yet a member of the Supreme Court bar. You have to have practiced for 3 years to be a member of the Supreme Court bar, but they made a special exception in this case, and we actually won and got rid of the death sentence in that case because of jury discrimination against the black population of the county in Alabama. So that was a incredible high point. But then, of course, representing Mohammed was another one.
Hey, hold up before you said I could interrupt, and I will just for a second here. Before we go to the champ, to Ali, what is it like arguing and winning in front of the U.S. Supreme Court a case at the age of 26? What's that like when you win a case at 26 in front of the Supreme Court?
Okay, so for 3 nights before you don't sleep, you make sure you didn't eat much in the morning. You stand up there and you're shaking, and then something incredible happens. You realize that you got a captive audience, and you know more about this case than they do. And so you, after the first question, and this is the way I have taught students how to argue in the future in law schools. After the first question, you suddenly feel powerful. I mean, it's a little bit like your gig. I'm sure many of the people who come on this program with you to talk with you are nervous. But the minute you ask them a question and they start talking about something they know, they probably feel great.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was like the way it was for me, and I kind of forgot that I was too young to be doing it.
Yeah. What do you take? And we're going to talk more about this because, as I said earlier, you work with Thurgood Marshall and Jack Greenberg. You represent Ali. We'll get to that in a moment. You have gone on to be one of the leading forces behind abolishing America's death penalty to the extent that we have. But I want to go back again to being 26. So you're not just arguing any case. Of course, any case in front of the Supreme Court is a big deal. But you're arguing a death penalty case. What, in retrospect, does it mean for you to have won a case about the death penalty in the Supreme Court?
Well, my mother was very happy. No, I'm of course, it felt wonderful, but it also exposed me to the racism that had led to the conviction and its support in the lower courts, and it played into the fact that with a few of my colleagues and also a great lawyer and professor, Anthony Amsterdam, we started a campaign to abolish the death penalty. And it took a long time to get to 1972, when it was, in fact, abolished for 4 years. So I see that first case as having been a bridge to something much bigger, because whenever I talk about this in lectures or classes, someone says to me, well, do you think it was worth it? And I always say, when you've played a role in saving over 600 lives, you kind of feel it's worth it.
Yeah. Let me stay with that. This is, as we say, this is getting good. This is getting good, Professor Meltzner. I want to stay with this for a second. So I had a guest on this program some weeks back. Her name is Judge LaDoris Cordell, retired jurist here in California. Notable work she has done even since her retirement. But she made the point, and I can't recall the number, but she made the point that hundreds of times, the issue that Thurgood Marshall dissented on more than any other issue while a member of the U.S. Supreme Court was the death penalty. That one issue, he laser focused on the entire tenure of his being on the high court. And here you are at 26 working at LDF, again, addressing and winning a case on the death penalty in front of that court. What do you make of the fact that more than any other issue, Thurgood Marshall laid on this death penalty thing for the entirety of his run on the Supreme Court?
Well, Marshall and his colleague William Brennan made the decision in 1976 that they weren't going to pick and choose, that they were against the death penalty for a variety of reasons. It was immoral and unethical in their view. Now, the real key here for me is that the Supreme Court of the United States has never, whether it was a so-called liberal court or a plainly arch-conservative court the way we have today, has never decided that death penalty cases are infected with racial discrimination in many ways. Well, Marshall and Brennan knew that, and they came out in a different place. And so they decided that the system was corrupt.
Yeah.
The system was unconstitutional. They didn't want to decide one case or another case. They understood that many of the people involved had committed horrible crimes. They weren't excusing them. They were saying that the system as a whole was defective and unconstitutional, in part because of race, in part because it was imperfect.
Yeah.
And it killed people who were innocent.
Yeah. Many people listening to you right now in this audience weren't even born in the 70s. And, of course, many of the students that you have taught over the years were not born in the early 70s. So let me just ask you to take a step back and remind us of what was happening in the country then that made it plausible, made it possible that for at least 4 years the U.S. Supreme Court would do away with the death penalty in this country.
Well, the campaign that the Legal Defense Fund ran stopped executions in 1967. And the country, just was fine. Nobody was really totally outraged by that. So in 72, the court, by the thinnest of margins, decided that the death penalty had been operating in a totally arbitrary way. People who committed heinous crimes were sentenced to life, and others who, were involved in a messy situation and probably hadn't behaved well, but they were not the kind of people who you would execute. They were sent to death row. And so the attitude at that time was that the key was arbitrariness in the way death sentences were handed out. And also, there was understanding about the role of race, but an unwillingness to name it. It was under the radar. And so the court in 1972, by a 5-4 margin, said the death penalty goes, and there was a loophole. And the loophole was, well, if you could fix arbitrariness, then maybe you could have it again. And in 1976, the court decided that that some of the states that had responded had actually fixed the loophole. Well, in all the years subsequent to that, we've decided that it just didn't work. But the present court won't acknowledge that.
So to your point now, I got just 2 minutes here. We'll do this question, and then we'll continue when we come forward, Professor Melchner. But let me ask you in these 2 minutes I have right now, what then, all these years later, do you make of America's current attitude about the death penalty?
Well, the interesting thing is it's withering away. The number of executions has plummeted. The number of states that have abolished have increased. Actually, if you add to the number of states that have abolished the number of states that haven't executed anybody in 10 years, you got a majority. And juries are deciding to send people to prison instead, and prosecutors aren't bringing death cases. The one rub here is that you got a Supreme Court that is dominated by people who won't even consider abolition in any respect.
But if the rest of the country is moving in that direction, and I'm not at all naive in asking this question, but if the rest of the country, if the data is moving as you just suggested that it is, and indeed it is, why can't they get that? Why can't they get with that?
Well, it's because the Supreme Court sometimes follows what people think and sometimes doesn't. and this court is impervious to public opinion and behavior on this particular issue.
So that's...
I have no doubts that eventually, long after I'm gone, that this is going to be an abolitionist country. All the countries in the world, with maybe one exception, that are like us, have abolished the death penalty.
From your mouth to God's ears, Professor Meltzner. So that's Thurgood Marshall. That's the NAACP LDF. And that's in part a good illustration of his work over many decades on the death penalty. What I haven't gotten to yet is his representing the GOAT, Ali. We'll talk about that with Michael Meltzner when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Israel says there will be no end to its airstrikes on the Gaza Strip until Hamas frees all of its hostages. Today's statement comes after the Red Cross called for fuel to be allowed into Gaza to prevent hospitals from, in their words, turning into morgues. Israel has vowed to annihilate Hamas following Saturday's attack that saw hundreds of militants storming the border and taking hostages. The Missouri Supreme Court has agreed to hear a discrimination case involving workers at a now closed Harley-Davidson plant in North Kansas City. The lawsuit was filed 8 days before the plant closed 4 years ago and alleges that mostly black workers who were employed by a contractor were treated unfairly by people who worked directly for Harley-Davidson. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
In South LA, watch out for a stalled vehicle on the 110 North just past the 105 that's blocking a right lane, causing a little slowdown there. Sigler continues in Diamond Bar, 57 South at Brea Canyon Road. Your 2 right lanes are blocked there. In the Mid-City area, 10 East at National, a vehicle fire on the off-ramp. And in Encino, 101 South at White Oak Avenue, a stall in your left lane.
Wendy's new Pumpkin Spice Frosty is peak fall. It'll make any kind of fall fun even fallier. So no matter how you fall, grab a rich, creamy Pumpkin Spice Frosty from Wendy's today. Limited time only at participating U.S. Wendy's. Vanilla Frosty is temporarily unavailable.
If you like using debit over credit, shouldn't you also get rewarded? Well, now you can with Discover Cashback Debit. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases with no fees, period. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
It happened again. For the second straight year, the Dodgers win 100 games in the regular season, then get eliminated in their first playoff series. The Dodgers lose by 2 last night and got swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Dodgers were also on the wrong end of history. Lance Lynn gave up 4 home runs in the 3rd inning, the first time a team had that many homers in 1 inning in a playoff game. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, the Dodgers' best hitters, were combined 1 for 21 in the series. Mookie was 0 for 11. The Pac-12 Conference had media day for the upcoming men's basketball season. Arizona, USC, and UCLA were picked to finish 1, 2, and 3 in the conference. Still no word yet on when USC freshman Bronny James will be cleared to start practicing with the team. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Talk Radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Walk to Save Lives. Join the American Heart Association's Los Angeles Heart and Stroke Walk, Sunday, October 22nd at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Team up with friends and family and walk to end heart and stroke. Every step you take and every dollar raised will help save lives and make our community a healthier place for all. Learn more and sign up for free at heartwalkla.org. Sponsored by Optum, UCLA Health, Providence, Keck Medicine of USC, and Dignity Health.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look, and unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at the gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
The Green Foundation, key health influencer, empowering our Black communities through action. The Green Foundation advocates for affordable health care, accessibility, and knows the importance of culturally relatable health care. Regardless of income, we believe it is a right for optimum health. The Green Foundation has been at the forefront for 25 years, dedicated solely to promoting prevention through early detection, annual screenings, and nutrition. We know you because we are you. Our hand-holding approach supports you and your family to receive your right to be treated fairly and receiving quality healthcare services. We want you and your family to know COVID-19 was devastating to our families and to our wallet. We can build back better by understanding prevention, wearing your mask, washing your hands, social distancing, and understanding the impact of long COVID. Get the care you deserve. Take advantage of your privileges. Contact us, info@thegreenfoundation.net. info@thegreenfoundation.net.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Michael Melsner is a great American, and I am honored to have him on this program in this hour. He has a new book out called Mosaic, Who Paid for the Bullet? We'll talk about that on the backside of this hour. But his career has been quite monumental in all the work that he's done at the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, working and hired by Thurgood Marshall, all the work he's done to lead America, to help America see why it needed to abolish the death penalty, which we did for 4 years back in the 70s. He was at the forefront of that. And now I want to talk about his representing the GOAT, Muhammad Ali. I am honored to say that I knew Ali in his lifetime. We were friends. I interviewed him many times, traveled with him, stayed at his house. I've had some great moments with Ali, but I never got a chance to represent Muhammad Ali. Michael Melsner, you did. Tell me that story.
Well, after Muhammad beat Sonny Liston and became the champ, everybody loved him. And then he had the temerity to announce that he was a Muslim. And the attitude of white America shifted completely. And then we're in the middle of the war in Vietnam, and when he was drafted, he refused to fight. He refused to accept induction, and he was indicted for draft evasion and convicted. And at the moment he was charged with the crime, every athletic commission in the United States pulled his license. The first one was the New York State Athletic Commission, and it was the most important one. They also pulled his heavyweight championship. Mm-hmm. Now, in 1967, I talked with his personal lawyer, Chauncey Eskridge, in Chicago, and I suggested that we might have a case. And I suggested it in part because of something that had nothing to do with Muhammad. It had to do with me as a 10-year-old with my father listening to Friday night fights from Madison Square Garden. My father would occasionally gamble on the fights, and he said to me, the thing to do is to bet on the guy who will win and or lose, and there'll be a third fight as well as a second one. And he also taught me about all the fighters, and many of them had criminal records.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put in the complaint, the legal complaint, that Muhammad had been stripped of his license because of his involvement with the criminal law, but that the New York State Athletic Commission had licensed all sorts of people with criminal records, a lot more serious than somebody being charged with what Muhammad was charged with.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we got into the files and we found out that 244 licensed fighters, including champs and contenders, had been convicted of crimes, some of them major felonies, and still been licensed. The state didn't care in those cases. So it was obvious that it was punitive action against Muhammad because of his Muslim associations and his race. So we brought this case, and eventually it came before a federal judge in New York who was a Marine Corps hero in the Marine Corps hero in the Second World War, and we were really afraid. In the end, he decided that Muhammad had been badly treated, arbitrarily treated, in violation of the Constitution. And the result was the first Ali-Frazier fight, and Ali being reinstated. And I'll never forget going to Madison Square Garden and watching that fight, the first fight I'd ever seen. It was brutal. It was quite an event. Muhammad was rusty, and he correctly lost a split decision, but of course, as you know, the rest is history.
Oh, yeah,
he came back
exactly.
and became... And what's most interesting is he was reviled as a traitor and a draft dodger in the late 60s until public attitude towards the Vietnam War shifted, and suddenly he became acceptable and eventually the most heroic figure in the world.
I have chill bumps right now. I say that because this is a moment for me. I mean, the most, speaking of moments, this is the seminal moment of Ali's life, of his professional career. When they strip him of his titles, refuse to let him fight, he can't make an income. And here you are at the epicenter of helping him get back in the ring. I mean, you can't tell the story of Ali without talking about that particular period. And for those of us who call him the GOAT, I speak for myself, I don't call him the GOAT just because of his exploits in the ring. He's always been my hero because he stood in his truth. He fought that. He dealt with all the repercussions and all the consequences. He did not back down. And you helped him win that fight. That's a big deal, Michael Meltzner.
Amen, amen about him being a hero. And you've been very kind about mentioning my novel, Mosaic. But I want to say, for anybody who's really interested in the details of how Muhammad came back, there's a chapter in another book of mine called The Making of a Civil Rights Lawyer that I guess is available on, places like Amazon that tells that story. So, and it's an incredible story. I think of what his life was like.
What were your? I asked you earlier about your takeaways from working with Thurgood Marshall. Let me ask the same question now about Ali. You were up close with him. You were fighting for him to get him back in the ring and to have America do right by him. What were your takeaways about the time you spent with the champ?
Well, two things. The thing about the champ was, in person, he was the same as everybody thinks about him. He was no different in private than in public. He was the way he was. And the second thing is, and this is really for people interested in the law, you can represent somebody in a case like this, and it's all about you and law books and colleagues who help you and picking the right case and judge and court. And you mean the client may be somebody who sends you missives about religion. So I felt this was a legal case more than anything else, but I was very proud to represent him. And in our encounter, I was introduced to him by his favorite broadcaster, and he was just the way in private that he came across in public. I don't know what your experience was like.
Same way.
But that was mine.
Nope, I couldn't agree more. Same way in public as in private. Funny. To the point, of course, to your point, always sending you missives one way or other about faith and religion. And so I had some funny moments with him. But I get, as I said, I've got chill bumps because I know this story well. But the opportunity to talk to the lawyer who fought for the champ and got him back in the ring, got his license to fight once again is a big deal. Our guest is Michael Melchner. We'll continue when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talents, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
We're celebrating 1 year of the K. From checking out the vibrant art and diverse dining in Leimert Park to cheering on your favorite team in Inglewood, you can choose your own adventure when you ride the Metro K-Line. Leave the car at home and go Metro. Visit metro.net/K-Line.
Only 1 in 5 people with autism are employed, despite many having the skill set and desire to work.
Maybe it's because employers don't know what kind of jobs they can do. Like, what about a programmer?
That's a job for someone with autism.
How about a healthcare worker?
Yep, that is too. People with autism can do a lot of different jobs, but often get overlooked due to outdated stigmas. Introducing WIN by Autism Speaks. We help businesses lead the way in inclusive hiring.
What about a ranch hand?
To learn more, go to autismspeaks.org/win.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Michael Melchner is our guest. What a career, what a life, what a legacy. His new book is called Mosaic, Who Paid for the Bullet? It is a novel, which is really fascinating, but it's in part based on some real events that Michael Melchner was a part of. Michael Melchner, tell me about the book Mosaic.
So in the early 60s, a courageous black dentist in Greensboro, North Carolina, called Jack Greenberg up, and he said that he had patients who couldn't get the treatment they needed, care they needed in Greensboro, because it had Jim Crow hospitals with excellent facilities. And Greenberg said to me, sue the bastards. And so at the time, in 1946, actually, the federal government started sending money to hospitals around the country. But in order to get the law passed, they had to, the administration had to agree to a separate but equal clause. In other words, it was up to Southern hospitals whether they wanted to segregate or exclude black patients and doctors and dentists if they wanted to. And hundreds of these hospitals were segregated, and they maintained these policies even after when we won the lawsuit against this provision. Mm-hmm. It was up to the federal government to enforce the law against all these hospitals, which had received vast amounts of federal money. Well, at first, they had limited success, and 20% of the hospitals not only refused to comply, many of them pretended to comply. They sort of took one patient and said, we're really integrated now. Well, there was a courageous and charismatic woman doctor in a big southern city that in the novel I call Gulf City, but it's pretty obvious what it was, who became a mole for the federal government. And she explained to the federal inspectors what was really going on. Very shortly after that, she was found dead on her front porch. The city fathers decided it was an accident, or maybe she was responding to a robbery, or maybe she was a lesbian, maybe she had a black lover, and the case disappeared. Nothing ever happened. 40 years later, I got a phone call from a medical researcher. He said, I think she was murdered. I have some proof. Look into it. You were the only lawyer who was still around who dealt with this. So I did, and unfortunately I had to tell him that there was no proof, that everybody was gone, and he just had to forget about it. 2 weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night with a cold sweat. I knew I had to do something, and the novel is the result. The novel tells the story, but it's a novel. In other words, I've created various characters, but it all comes from actual events and what happened when the lover of this charismatic female doctor, who was a civil rights lawyer, decides to seek revenge.
Michael Meltzner is an amazing guy. And not only is he a brilliant lawyer, but he's also a playwright and a novelist. This new book is called Mosaic, Who Paid for the Bullet, written by Michael Meltzner. Our remaining moments with him when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for education as a right, not a privilege. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is a private, non-profit, community-founded, student-centered university committed to cultivating diverse health profession leaders who are dedicated to social justice and health equity for underserved populations. CDU does this through outstanding education, clinical service, and community engagement. Recently, Charles Drew University made history by opening only the 5th medical school at an historically black university. Congratulations, South LA, and congratulations to the dean of the medical school, Dr. Deborah Protho-Stith. CDU is now training doctors and providing $90 million in annual economic benefit to Watts and surrounding neighborhoods. To apply for medical school, get more information, or sign your child up for the Junior Doctors Saturday School program, visit cdrewu.edu. That's cdrewu.edu. At KBLA, we are dedicated to equity in education and ending healthcare apartheid, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the Black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting Black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
Michael Melchner, I've got about 4 minutes left in this conversation, which I have enjoyed immensely. I can't even, I don't have a language to tell how much I have enjoyed this and how honored I am to have had the opportunity to speak to you for this hour. I've got as many lawyer jokes as anybody. I got a bunch of them. But I say that only because you are the epitome of one who has used the law to do so much good across the years. What do you make of what you've been able to accomplish inside of the law over all these decades?
Well, you know, it's a tough question these days because of what's going on in the country. Mm-hmm. But what I really want to say, I guess, is that what I'm very proud of the things that we did at LDF in the 60s, and proud of what I did. But, you know, everything has to be put in an institution. Mm. If it weren't for the Legal Defense Fund, none of this would have happened. And it's a great organization, and it's still doing it. And and it's challenging everything that ought to be challenged today, even though at times you kind of feel that the momentum of the civil rights movement has been lost. Mm-hmm. But it really is a different country because of the civil rights movement, and many of the issues that trouble us today, we wouldn't even be exposed if we hadn't done what we done in the 60s and 70s. When
you see the retrenchment that we are making in this country, indeed, in the sphere of legal proceedings, when you see the retrenchment, how do you sustain your hope in this moment?
I don't know. I always quote Satchel Paige. He said, "Don't look back. Someone might be gaining on you." Mm-hmm. I think we just have to keep fighting the fight. The civil rights movement was against enormous odds for most of its existence, and so there's no difference today. The issues may be a little different, but the odds are still against you. You have to keep fighting for it, and in the end, it's the best way to live.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great way to close this program. Michael Melchner has not just been a witness to history. He has been a history maker, and his work and witness are to be celebrated. And I revel in the opportunity to talk to him for this hour. His name is Michael Melchner. His book is called Mosaic, Who Paid for the Bullet. He is the Matthews Distinguished University Professor of Law Emeritus at Northeastern University School of Law. Professor Melchner, what an honor again, sir, to have had you on this program. Thank you for this blessed opportunity.
And back to you, and thanks for the play. It's such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, my friend. That's our show. Back here tomorrow to do it all over again. Tomorrow being Friday, it is the best of Tavis Smiley. Some great conversations you may have missed this week that we will reprise for you tomorrow. It's going to be a great show. I can tell you that right now because I know the 3 conversations you're going to hear tomorrow, so you don't want to miss it. Thanks for tuning in today and all this week, and until tomorrow, and as always, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley, and keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network.